welcome back to Be More, where we inspire you to be a little bit more of every role within the Salesforce ecosystem. For today's session, we are talking about what it means to be more authentic. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, Zarina. So, Zarina, if you could introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, so I'm Zarina Varley Scott. I am an Aussie living in Canada, and I am a associate Salesforce consultant at a boutique consulting firm based in Toronto, Canada.
For today's session, your role is about being more authentic. So, if you were to introduce that role to somebody, how would you explain to them what that means? What kind of levels and kind of layers does that role have?
Yeah, that's quite well, as you said, layered
Yeah.
question when it comes to being more authentic. So I guess I'll share part of my journey with becoming more authentic, if that
Mhm.
is as a way of kind of describing it. So I am I've always loved color, I've always loved patterns, I've always, been really into the brighter the better, but I always kind of felt like I had to kind of hide that part of myself. And
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I'd want to put on a fancy dress and I'd get the whole it's not a fashion parade or something along those lines, and so I'd kind of be like, "No, okay, I'm checking myself a bit." And then as I grew up, that also kind of seemed to continue of getting I know I'm talking about, dressing a lot at the
Mm.
moment, but that's kind of how it kind of evolved for me, being mindful of even just something like wearing 2 patterns together. "Oh, no, I shouldn't do that. It's too much. It's too much." And then finally, when I went back for a trip to Sydney, where I'm from, in 2019, I kind of noticed, um, a lot of the fashion and the culture was a lot more out there than it is in here in Canada, and a lot more, I don't know, it kinda just stood out to me of all these beautiful colors and birds and flowers and
Yeah.
whatnot, and I was kind of like, "Wow, okay, so I guess this is just normal. I shouldn't if I wanna wear something like that, I will." And that really kind of opened doors for me of not wanting to really hide who I am as much anymore. Because I mean, I'm a massive geek. I love superheroes, I love cartoons, I love cosplaying, I love going to Comic Cons, and I never felt, before, certainly in my previous role, that I could really bring all of that stuff to the table, that it was kind of, "Oh, you should act a certain way when you are with in a certain setting," versus I noticed all the other people kind of talking about what their hobbies were, and, oh, they liked to play golf and whatnot. But I felt for me, I couldn't really do that. So now when I started dressing the way that I want to dress, I started really embracing those parts of myself and thought, um, it's important for me to be authentic and be who I am, because that means I'm bringing my whole self to whatever I'm doing. And I really felt that the Salesforce ecosystem is a really great place for that, and they absolutely embraced that. They absolutely embraced
Mhm.
me being an eccentric dresser, me loving cosplay, me loving superhero culture and all that type of stuff. It really it feels like a safe space to be able to bring my whole authentic self to, an ecosystem that I'm so involved in and that has now become my full-time role. And now in the company I'm working for, I bring my whole authentic self. I talk about, video games. I talk about my eccentric fashion choices, and everyone kind of embraces that. There's no, and in fact, I would say it actually encourages other people to bring more of their authentic self to their work setting as well, where they might not necessarily wanted to do that previously.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. And I'm glad to hear how it ties back to the Salesforce ecosystem because we're all different, but at the same time, I think the ecosystem is known for being friendly and welcoming and accepting everybody. So it's good to
Exactly.
bring it
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your day-to-day role is as a Salesforce professional. Is there any kind of examples of how you bring your authentic self to those conversations with your clients, I guess? How does that work? And I guess there's perhaps a line there, right?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I need to get a new headset for all my work calls, and I was considering getting a Hello Kitty one with ears and a bow, and I thought, you know
Right.
what? As much as I would probably be able to get away with that, that might be just a little bit too far. And then I kind of decided no, that I didn't want to go that road. So I'm getting a pink headset anyway.
Yeah.
But I would say one thing in particular is I don't blur my Zoom background when I'm on video calls. I know a lot of people do,
Mm,
but I make sure to have it obviously looking clean and neat. And I have a lot of Salesforce plushies on display, and I have a picture of Wonder Woman and some art
yeah.
that one of my friends made. And it's always actually a really good conversation starter because people, or clients rather, and other people that I happen to be on calls with, they notice and they're like, "Oh, that's an interesting background. Like, I see various Salesforce characters, and I see, oh, you've got a Wonder Woman up there." And I think it kind of helps people loosen up a little bit and
Mhm.
realize, oh, even though we are talking about business related things, that we don't need to be all like strictly corporate culture. And certainly in this business, it certainly helps when people loosen up a little bit too, because then we form a bit of a trust layer there as well. Oh man,
Mhm.
trust layers. We've been talking about those a
Yeah.
little lately, haven't we? Um, but it really does. It helps people feel more comfortable knowing that I am kind of opening up to them, and they feel that they can open up to me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And don't mean to kind of bring the conversation down to a more negative note, but I think it's important to ask this. Do you sometimes have people that kind of pass judgment off on it, or perhaps react differently to, like, if you had a blurred background to an actual background? Do you ever experience that?
Great question. And no, no one's actually ever commented to me. Um, Mind you, they may have thought that. But
Yeah.
one thing I've learned over the years is someone else's opinion of me is none of my business. So I really try and just not think about that, because everyone has thoughts about everyone else. And another great quote that I heard actually from the Two Wit podcast that Christy and Melinda used to do, which was
Mhm.
there are multiple different versions of you in everyone else's mind. So Tom's version of Zarina is different to my boss's version of Zarina and my version of Zarina. So I have to just focus on me, and if someone really has a if it's that big of a deal and they really feel the need to complain to me or complain to someone else, then fair enough, we'll deal with it. But at the moment, it hasn't been a problem, and it's only gotten positive reactions.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. And again, I think it kind of ties a little bit back to the Salesforce ecosystem being so open and embracing of everybody. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, if you were thinking again, perhaps your own experience is here, but there's lots of different roles in the ecosystem. We've got kind of admin, consultant, developer, and other roles too. Against the background of those roles, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who was trying to be kind of more themselves and more authentic as a result?
That is a great question. It's also a really hard question to answer because it's so
Mm,
personal. And I know that everyone struggles with identity and being themselves, or they're being their full selves in a work setting. I would just say, like, start small and kind of work your way up, really, because I didn't start initially with pink hair, let me tell you. I It took me a while to get to the level of feeling comfortable in myself to go, what I would really like to have pink hair. So now I'm going to have pink hair. That took a while. So just, I guess, work on yourself and start feeling more comfortable um in your day-to-day life, of, if I wasn't judging myself or thinking about what other people think of me, how would I be acting? Because I think quite often we think so much about what other people think of us
yeah.
that it can be overwhelming and quite honestly exhausting. So I've really tried hard to kind of put that aside, and that has really helped me in my journey, and I think that's something that we can all work on, really.
Yeah, and I guess if you perhaps get a little bit caught up in thinking about what other people are thinking or what their thoughts are, that in turn affects how you're behaving as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we really do get so tied up in that, and have struggled with mental health for quite a while, as I know a lot of people do. And I find when I'm at my darkest is when I'm thinking more about what other people are thinking about me.
Yeah.
So I'm happier and I'm more well adjusted when I'm not thinking about that type of stuff and being who I am. So it's embracing who you are, um, it does wonders for how you feel about yourself, and certainly not thinking about how other people think about you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the whole mental health thing as well, I can relate to that. And if I'm having kind of a bad turn with my mental health, my confidence kind of goes down as well. Do you experience
Absolutely.
the same thing?
I actually do, yeah, of course. And it's funny, this it kind of turns around to be about mental health,
Mm,
because a lot of when I'm wearing bright and colorful outfits, there's actually a term for it that's kind of done the rounds. It gets mentioned in articles here and there, but there's quite a community online about it. It's called dopamine dressing. So
right.
it's literally talking about dressing yourself happy. So that if you're having a bad day or you're struggling to kind of get out of a certain mindset, wearing something bright and colorful will help you with that. And it really, really does. And it's also really interesting to note that when I'm wearing a bright and colorful outfit to try and boost my mood, if I'm somewhere, it will boost other people's moods too, because they will see, oh, wow, okay, look at that. And then the amount of times I've gotten comments from people of like, you know what, I just have to say, your outfit is so colorful and it is just bringing me joy today. Like I never set out to do that, but it's a really nice, I guess, um, oh, I can't think of the right word, but it's nice that people also find joy out of dopamine dressing in a way that it's
Mm,
something for me to help with my mental health is maybe putting a smile on someone else's face.
yeah, definitely. And I think it's a conversation starter as well. Like if I walk around in my bright green boots, people are gonna notice and then
Exactly.
they're gonna pass comment, and it's gonna start a conversation, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And I guess some days when you're dressing yourself, you feel a little bit golden too as well. Is that is that fair to say?
Yeah. So in at Toronto World Tour in 2019, I was awarded the Golden Hoodie by Sarah Franklin. Actually, she's the one that presented it to me.
Wow.
So now whenever I'm at a Salesforce event, I am usually a glowing beacon of of goldness. Though
Mhm.
sometimes I do find, um, and again, this is all coming back to confidence and wanting to be authentic. I sometimes shy away from putting it on, and then people will like, "Why? You should
Yeah.
embrace." So I do. I obviously at Dreamforce and other events like that, I wear my golden hoodie. I usually am wearing some other flamboyant cloud related accessories and prints as well, which I always get comments on. But again, people love it. I could probably stand to take a little bit of my own medicine and embrace wearing, being authentic and wearing my golden hoodie more, because everyone's always like, "Why? If I had that, I would wear it every day. I would wear it to the shops." I'm like, "Well, not sure about that." But
Yeah.
certainly, it is certainly a conversation starter when I'm at Salesforce events, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely people will notice you from across the room type of
Yes,
thing, right?
absolutely. Yes.
So thinking about your own journey to the place where you are now, where you're comfortable with being your authentic self, and you've taken other steps as well. So perhaps sounds like you built up to going pink with your hair. It didn't just happen overnight.
True, yep.
On that journey, is there anything you would change or do differently?
Ooh, that is a I know I say that for every question, but
Yeah.
it is a great question. Um, I don't think so, because I feel like we put too much emphasis on failure, and I'm not talking that I feel like I've kind of failed in this journey at all, but I think, like, we are our lived experiences. I'm a
Hmm.
very passionate advocate about that. So if maybe I was something that was, well, no, that's not even a good example because I really haven't had any negative experiences through this. If anything, I it's just helped me kind of bring myself out of my shell a little bit more and really be the maybe sometimes over the top, but passionate and compassionate individual that I am, and dressing the way I do really helps with that. But I just think certainly when it comes to um, I guess bringing your authentic self in a work setting,
Yeah.
I don't think you everything is a learning experience, and even if you're dealt with something, you've maybe shared a little bit too much or something, you've learned from that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a well, I don't think it's really in necessarily even in a bad way. You've just learned something about yourself. You've learned something about how your role and things like that. Um, it's yeah, I think we put too much emphasis on failure being a bad thing because failure just means you tried. You
Mm,
might not have been successful, but you tried, and that's better than not trying at all.
yeah. I think that's really important thing to remember because the failure does happen, right? It's uh, perhaps inevitable is the wrong word, but it does happen, right? It is likely to happen, and I think it's important to remember that and kind of pick yourself up from that and learn from it and evolve and change and perhaps build on other things as a result. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more really. Like it's certainly what comes to mind when thinking about life in the Salesforce ecosystem. Quite honestly, we depending on what we're doing, we could be failing on a daily basis. And it could be something
Yeah.
as simple as, oh, I failed to get that formula correct, but you learned what not to do. And it just kind of grows from there in the various roles, whether you're writing code or you're designing an entire system from scratch.
Mm,
Everything that we do is about lived experiences and about success that comes from failure.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I can certainly resonate with that. Like if I hadn't have perhaps kind of put my foot in my mouth in that conversation or built something and then got all of the flow error emails 10 minutes later, I wouldn't be doing it differently the next time.
Exactly, exactly. And yes, we've all received our fair share of flow error emails, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I think one of my proudest failures perhaps is creating an infinite loop in flow and it actually never stopping until I deactivated the flow. Uh, that's some kind of skill, right there.
Uh, It is, but at the same time, now you know. Now you know you've learnt from that, and that'll be something you check every time from now on, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
exactly. So if you were to kind of summarize what attributes or maybe perhaps more ways of thinking it takes to be more authentic, are there any kind of key points or kind of top tips for the people in the audience out there?
Yeah, so I would say get to know yourself a bit more and
Mm,
what you like, and don't worry too much about having, I guess, your home. Okay, look, I know that we obviously have to have some separation between our home life and our work life, that's for sure. But I guess what I'm trying to say is don't worry about that too much. Start to embrace that a bit more. Like if you are a passionate sports fan, there's no reason why you can't bring that side of you to work. If you're a passionate video game fan,
mhm.
there's no reason why you can't bring that part of yourself to work, as long as you're doing it in, a professional and a considerate way. Just I guess like it's more about like have we all have different versions of ourselves, and we
Yeah.
mask certain attributes of ourselves as well. It's kind of more about starting to embrace those together and blending them, because while we it's okay to have different versions of ourselves, sometimes our true self is when you are embracing all of those things together, which is really what I'm all about with being more authentic. So getting to know yourself a bit more and starting to feel more comfortable, maybe showing a different side of you to people that you wouldn't necessarily do that, um, because you never know what reaction you're going to get. And I mean that in a positive way. I've found
Mm,
when I open up, people open up back to me, and then that just strengthens the relationship, whether it be internally or with clients.
yeah,
Kind of finding that neutral ground and allowing someone to feel comfortable and be like, "Oh, you know what? I can let my guard down." And people notice that if you are being true to yourself um and really embracing who you are in a compassionate way, it really it really does wonders for people around you as well. So just get to know yourself and start to maybe pull down some of those walls that separate the different versions of ourselves.
yeah. Totally get that, and definitely a fan of pulling down walls. So yeah, totally relate there. I think it's also perhaps trial and error, right? Of learning what does and doesn't work, because what works for you might not work for me, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing is you and I are completely different people. Sure,
Mhm.
we have the Salesforce ecosystem in common, but Tom's authentic self is very different from Zarina's authentic self. So why should we try and be someone that we're not? Because we are all our own person.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And ultimately, you by doing that, you learn what doesn't work, and then ultimately won't do what doesn't work again. You'll try something else and perhaps hopefully get better for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely an exercise in starting to feel comfortable, and you're going to have to gradually work up um to full authenticity mode. But you know,
100%. Yeah.
but it's a journey, and you'll never really be successful if you don't start on that journey.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about perhaps finding what makes you feel comfortable, because I think for me, definitely comfortable leads to confidence. Like those two feelings feed each other, right?
Absolutely. That is you've really I hate to use the phrase hit the nail on the head. So I'm trying to get away from
Yeah.
using some of those more, aggressive terminology, but you've really captured what I was trying to say of the benefits of being my authentic self and embracing who I am have meant that my confidence levels have absolutely increased, and it means that I'm better at my job if I'm
Mm,
more confident and can kind of let some of this arena out that I wouldn't necessarily do. It means that I'm able to embrace being more confident because I am being more authentic, if that makes sense.
yeah.
When we're more comfortable, we're more confident. And I am more comfortable with pink hair in a bright a bright colored top and giant earrings. Being more authentic definitely leads to being more confident for sure.
Yeah. And it gives you a mental health kind of boost as well, right? Because again, all of these things are kind of internal going on in your head, right? And the good feelings create good feelings, right?
Exactly. Totally get that.
Yeah. Okay. So the you now have an opportunity to perhaps make people more aware of something about being more authentic, or change a myth, or kind of clarify something that's maybe like a misconception of this. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind that you want to take the opportunity now to just clarify for the audience about perhaps what being more authentic is or isn't?
Yeah, so I would say being more authentic is whatever that means to you. There is no right or wrong way to do that. It's more about embracing our flaws, embracing um certainly I would say definitely having discussions around mental health is a huge layer of being more authentic that I am really happy to see being kind of embraced in society, but also in the Salesforce ecosystem in
Hmm.
general. There's a lot more talk about that. We have the mental health community group
Yeah.
in particular, and I think the two are very closely linked. In fact, that's the big journey for me is I noticed the improvements to my mental health when I started embracing more of my authentic self, and with the dressing in particular. But I would just say you're not alone. There are a lot of people that think that they have to be someone that they're not, or like I've mentioned, put on a certain mask. A lot of it is to do with hiding how you're feeling from a mental health perspective. But if you're even just being more open with that, you will be surprised at how many people are on the same page as you and have had similar journeys and similar experiences. And just sharing that part of you can really help bring you closer together and even make you feel better about how you are, because being
Yeah.
struggling with mental health can be very lonely,
Hmm.
um, especially as for the longest time it was such a taboo subject, and it's still very taboo.
Yeah.
But now that we're all starting to talk about it a lot more, it feels a lot less lonely. And I think that is really the biggest takeaway from all of this is embracing your authentic self and being more comfortable in who you are leads to more confidence, and that also leads to you being in a more healthy mental health state as well.
Yeah. Totally. I think all of those things internally kind of happening in your brain at the same time, they all feed each other and ultimately help each other, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm afraid we're having to wrap up today's session, but before we do go, is there a way for people to connect with you? And do you have any pieces of content that have really resonated with you or kind of helped you on your journey? Anything like that that you wanted to shout out before we do go?
Yeah. So I have a Salesforce blog that I write. It's called Adventures in Salesforcing, which I named right after I had watched Adventures in Babysitting. Um, and I focus on non-technical content for the most part because I know that I'm never going to be the most technical person in the room. So I bring my authentic
Yeah,
um, point of view.
Salesforcing. Yeah.
Yes, Salesforcing. Bring my authentic point of view to the pieces that I choose to write, and they're usually there's a lot of soft skills stuff in there. But my latest blog was about Dreamforce and what my kind of key takeaways were about that.
Mhm.
And spoiler alert, they're not all the oh this great feature and that great feature. It's kind of more focused on what we can be doing.
Yeah.
Um, I also write another blog, which is um, it's actually about kind of what we've been talking about today and about me embracing my style in particular and how that's helped with my mental health. So that's zazmataz.ca and zazstyle.ca, are the two links to those. But you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm still occasionally on Twitter, but I know that's unfortunately the ecosystem isn't as engaged there as they once were, but you can
Yeah.
find me in those places.
Okay, awesome. So I'll be sure to pop those links in the description as well so the audience can check out those resources. And hopefully, together, we will help people become more authentic. So thanks again for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. This has been lovely.
Thanks for tuning in to Be More with Tom Bassett. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any feedback in the comments.